Welcome to the Minnesota Liberty Network podcast, your source for all things freedom, individual rights, and the search for liberty in the land of 10,000 lakes. Recording from the Main Street studios in District 58 in the beautiful city of Lonsdale. I am producer Matt V, and I bring to you Senator Bill Liskey and Representative Drew Roach. They will bring you news from the legislature and in their district, along with great guests. All right, so let's get to it.
What's up, Liberty lovers? Episode 2.
Here we go, episode 2.
Let's do it. So,
I think we're gonna get the kinks out this time, though.
I think so. Yeah, episode 2. Maybe slight production issues. We're learning. We're getting there.
We got a good guy over there on
We do.
productions.
He's working hard.
Tough producer.
Learn a little bit every time we do it.
That's right. Right.
Hey, if we can record one time each episode, we're doing good.
Yeah, we'll get it rocking. I think this
Next
one's gonna
time.
be much better.
Soon
But-
enough, we'll be live, and then you'll really be on the spot.
Yeah. So, get into it.
Yeah,
The house.
the house.
Yeah.
What?
The Capitol. We got
Something.
a lot of
Something happened in the last couple weeks, or what?
Oh, a lot of something happening
I thought we were just gonna go all session with no house.
behind the scenes, on the floor. A lot of drama.
Oh yeah, drama all the time.
Yep.
So we have a new speaker, huh?
We do. Again, new
Yeah.
speaker for a second time.
But it's the same person, right?
Same person.
All right.
Lisa
Well,
Damuth.
Lisa Damuth. I was
Yep.
gonna say, who is it?
Lisa Damuth got elected with 67 votes. We finally had a quorum.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
Everybody showed up to there.
Well, everybody showed up except one,
Oh,
Mr. Finke.
oh, Mr. Finke.
Yeah, I think he was protesting.
Maybe, or maybe he was sick.
I don't think so. He had some proxy votes.
Oh, okay.
He was making his voice be heard.
Okay. Well,
So
I
he
just-
didn't vote for Hortman and he didn't vote for the rules.
That's interesting.
Interesting. So proves he's got some balls.
Yeah. Balls.
I'm just saying.
I mean, sure.
I mean, some people can pretend. I'm not going to pretend.
I mean, you're right. There's no reason to pretend. So I was reading through these weird rules that you guys got going on. So I hear a couple people didn't vote for the rules other than Mr. Finke. Who would those people be?
Myself and another rep, House Republican,
Okay.
Mr. Tom DePel.
Oh, and I'm glad you guys didn't, because these rules are pretty concerning, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, when I ran, and the principles that I ran on are the same principles that I'm going to carry through with every single day, right? I think that's part of the reason why. Well, it is the reason why I got in politics, is because I saw a lack of principles and people standing up for what they believe in, and acquiescing to the party and the powers that be and the special interest groups that want to try to navigate you in a specific direction. And that is the problem that we have, not only with national politics, but in federal politics, but in local politics, right?
Sure.
And so I definitely had some concerns. And so, we had 2 votes on Thursday, one of which was a rules package and one of which was for Speaker Lisa Damuth. But, I ran on 4 principles and will continue to stand on those principles. And the things that were the most important to me were education, fiscal responsibility, so lowering taxes, having a balanced, reasonable budget, public safety, and election integrity. And in my opinion, this rules agreement, essentially, we just,
Threw the baby out with the bathwater.
yeah, I
That's a
mean,
good way to
we just
describe it.
ignored the election integrity issues that the majority of the of the Republican members knew that there were those issues, right? They knew that we had election integrity issues, that race in 54A with Aaron Paul and Brad Tapke had many concerns and discrepancies, and yet we just kind of pushed that off to the side in exchange for a leader, Speaker of the House for 2 years. And for me, although I definitely want to have Republican leadership, I'm not willing to give up my principles for that. Right?
Right.
This isn't about power. This is about doing the right thing.
Well,
It's standing up for what you believe in.
and I think let's get to that. You said you have the speakership, and you have this power sharing agreement, or you have this agreement, right? Matt, bring up Exhibit 1. I want to talk about what this could mean and how concerning this could be. You know, I was excited when I heard that there was some stuff getting done because it means that some of this legislation that's been crushing people from the last 2 years might actually get changed. And so I was looking forward to seeing what this agreement might actually mean. So I read through the whole thing, and the reason I read through it is because I watched what happened in the Senate, right? So in the Senate, we had a power sharing agreement for the first couple weeks, and our power sharing agreement basically told the speakers, or in our case, the presidents of the Senate, what they could and couldn't do. And so when we made a motion to remove Senator Mitchell during this power sharing agreement, it fell on the president to decide whether or not a motion was in order. And unfortunately, here we are dealing with the Senate making a motion, and they ruled our motion out of order, and it fell because the two presidents had to share the power of president, and that's concerning to me. So let's look at this rule that you guys have. So
Sure.
looking at this Exhibit 1, number 4, powers shared by the Speaker and Democrat Farmer Labor Caucus leader. Basically, it's saying that you still have two speakers. You may not have two people speaking up on the speaker's desk, but you still have two speakers, because everything that the speaker usually has by herself is now being shared with the DFL caucus leader. It says members of any council, commission, boards, or other bodies required to be appointed by the Speaker of the House or the minority leader of the House must be appointed in equal numbers. So all of your committees are going to be equal numbers, which we knew, right? Like that was part of the agreement here in a few weeks. You guys are going to be that way. But more importantly, when there's an issue, so if you go to 4.2, when there's an issue and your disagreement comes in, House Rules 2.01 and 10.05 are where this comes in. But they have to agree. And if they don't agree, it'll fall to the clerk.
Mm-hmm.
And so whoever the clerk is going to get to decide. It's the same thing that happened in the Senate. When we were having this motion and we disagreed whether it was in order or out of order, the secretary of the Senate, a non-elected official, was the one to make the decision. And that's the same thing that's going to happen in the House.
Yeah.
Every time there's going to be a motion. So for me, I can appreciate where you're going to go. I have a feeling you're going to talk about why you voted against it, but
Yep.
this is something that is another reason why I would have voted against it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was, what was it, 6-page agreement with those rules. That definitely played a factor, for sure.
but I don't think that was number one. So why don't you talk about your number one reason?
Well, my number one is rule number 9, which
So let's go to Exhibit 2, Matt. Let's go to Exhibit 2.
which talks about election contests. So essentially, this rule is really the defining rule, is what brought the Democrats in, right? Because they wanted to be able to protect the 54A seat, which was Brad Tapke's seat.
Right.
And so what this rule did is essentially took the power out of individuals like myself, my ability to bring any motions to the floor to contest that race. And essentially what it requires is that any election contests be brought through the ethics committee. Now, for those of you that have been paying attention to Minnesota politics, specifically last year with the Senate, where we've got the cat burglar, right? Although not convicted, Senator Mitchell is, pretty much guilty as charged, right? I think if the people were to see the police footage of that night, this would be a moot point. We wouldn't even be talking about it. They would have kicked her to the curb, right after this happened. So the reality is she's still into the Senate. They went through an ethics committee complaint, and it was a joke. It's a farce, right? It's just for theater, and so if we want to have any election contest for this Brad Tapke, which again there were many discrepancies. It's not that a Democrat won. Matter of fact, I would love for the opportunity for something like this to happen on the Republican side, because then somebody like me, who is all about election integrity, I can say it's not about party politics. It's not because it was a Democrat. If the same things happened
Yep.
with a Republican, one of my colleagues within the caucus, and they won by 14 votes with 20 ballots thrown, I'd say, dude, we need a new race.
Right.
Right? We just have to have a special election. And I would be ready to knock on doors and reach those constituents and do everything we can to win that special election, because that's giving us the ability to stand on principles and do what we say we're going to do. But it's funny because these election contests always happen to
They seem to fall in favor of one party over
correct.
the other.
So
Every single time.
How is that just always just so convenient that the Democrats always end up winning these seats?
Controversial seats.
It's complete garbage. And then
Well-
they get to paint me as an election denier. This
perfect example.
nonsense freaking gaslighting argument, which
Right.
is complete bullshit. And so that was my beef, right?
Right.
Is the fact that I've been sitting here, last Saturday, for instance, me and my fiance and our middle child, and it's been pretty nice out. The weather's been pretty good, but that Saturday was blistering. I mean,
Yep.
it was a little
It was
windy
cold.
and it was cold. My hands were freezing. But we took
What did we do last Saturday? Well, just a small tangent. Somebody had a birthday.
Oh yeah, well yes, I had a surprise birthday bill and a bunch
Sorry
of my
to tangent
friends
a little bit.
surprised me with a birthday party. That was very nice. But before that,
Yep. It was pretty cold.
it was cold, and so before that in the morning, like I said, myself and our middle daughter and fiance, we went and knocked doors in 54A and dropped lit to educate the voters about that race, right? Because in the reality is Brad Tapke has been controlling the narrative in that. Republicans have been silent about what was going on with that race, and really, when you got two bodies that go to court, and only one shows up, they're gonna win the ruling. So
Right.
the public opinion was siding with Brad Tapke because they were the only ones talking about the issue. So
Right.
it was time for us to go in and charge forward and start educating the voters about all the discrepancies. In that race, for instance, they had 21 missing ballots, and they found out on October 18th that those ballots were missing
Right.
because there was the clerk, the Shakopee clerk, that was in a room by herself adjudicating and going through the absentee ballots all by herself.
See,
And
that
there-
doesn't sound like good.
and when they
ways
went
of
to go
handling
when they went to
elections.
go balance the votes that night was when they found a discrepancy in the number of votes ballots that were supposed to be in and the ballots that were there. So they knew on October 18th that there was 20 missing ballots.
Sure.
And the two candidates didn't find out till November 8th,
See, that's crazy to me. That's a long time.
right? Like now for me, just to give some context, when I was running and campaigning, we were getting emails on a daily basis from mid-October that had, for any of our constituents that had absentee ballot issues, if their absentee ballot didn't get approved or didn't get accepted for whatever reason, I got a list of those constituents, and I went and knocked on their door, right?
Sure.
To make sure that their ballots were counted and
Oh,
say, hey,
absolutely.
just so you know, I'm getting a notification that your absentee ballot hadn't been counted. Something's wrong. Here's the number you can call. Here's the process you can go through to make sure that your vote is counted. And so they knew that.
Right.
Why didn't that happen? Right. So
100%.
many issues I could not stand back and just let. Unfortunately, I had no control over it, but allow Brad Tapke to be sat. And you would think that Brad Tapke would be, a man of conviction, a man of principle, and be willing to stand up and say, you know what, I agree.
Let's just do a new election.
Let's just do a new election. So for that reason, I did not vote for the rules, right?
Sure.
That rule alone. Now,
Right.
you've brought up some other issues within the rules, and I don't disagree with those. To me, those are a slight mute point because we still have an opportunity to get the majority.
Oh,
Now,
absolutely.
maybe at a slim option or a slim
So
ability, but there is still the ability, right?
tell our viewers what you're talking about, because
So-
you're going on a tangent, but we got to know what your tangent's about.
So there's still an election to be had, right? In 40B, and that's the 40B race where Curtis Johnson said that he lived in the district. You know, it got brought to court, found out that he was lying about, you know, his place of residency. So he was not allowed to be seated and allow for his election certificate to be recognized. So we will be having a special election on that 40B race on March 11th. So Republicans,
and who's the Republican candidate?
Paul Wickstrom.
Paul Wickstrom. See, so anybody that's out there that's strong conservative values, wants to see the Republicans maintain their majority in the House, make sure you get out and help campaign for Paul Wickstrom.
Absolutely. And this is where Republicans across the state get off their ass. Okay. Right. I get it. You got a We the People t-shirt. I've said this so many times. You got a We the People t-shirt. You got a flag flying from your front house. You got the decal on the truck. That doesn't do anything. Action is what does something.
You have to tell your neighbors.
You got to get out there. It's cold. It's not fun. We'd rather be, you know, watching Netflix or do whatever we do on the weekends.
Or what are we doing today? You know, a lot of people are watching the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. Watch the Super Bowl. Then. You can go knock on doors today. You're going to get some people pissed
You
off.
can knock on doors tomorrow, though.
But the reality is yeah, this is where Republicans and conservatives put their money where their mouth is. And they go help out Paul Wickstrom's race. They go knock on doors. They donate money, do everything they can, because this will help shape the state of Minnesota if we're able to pull off. Let's just say it'll be a miracle, right? It will
be impressive.
Let's not lie
happens.
to the people here. I mean, there's a slim chance, but there is a chance, right? You can't win the game if you don't play. So I know I'm going to be spending some time in that district, knocking on doors, reaching the voters, doing whatever we can. Special elections, just history shows that they have a very low turnout. So the reality is, based on the numbers that we've looked at and the history of turnout for special elections, Republicans only need about 4,700 votes
Right.
in
exactly.
that district. So it's not a lot.
No.
And there are just about 10,000 Republican registered voters in that district. So we need 40% of them.
We just need them all to get out to vote.
Get out and vote. So if it's important to you to make sure that we change the culture in Minnesota, Roseville residents, you got to get off your ass and you got to vote. Okay. You just do. And all those other conservatives out there that don't live in that district, you
Get out
got
there and help.
got to, right? This is what helps shape our world in Minnesota and how we start moving the agenda forward of conservative values.
And
so
do you want to talk about your press release that you put out there?
yes,
Exhibit 3.
good call.
I just figure before we change subjects, I just want to stay on this election,
I like that.
on this election integrity, stay on what's so important to you. And so this is important.
Let me pull it up because I can't see it on the screen there. So just give me a second here. Take me 2 seconds. But essentially, I put out a press release, and well, as I'm doing that, I'll say this too.
And you don't even have to read it to them, but this is an example of what you got going on. So just tell us what the press release says.
So the press release
basics.
essentially just tells, you know, my constituents and, you know, people across the state that election integrity is important to me. And I did not vote for the rules the majority reason is because I stand for election integrity. And the fact that this, in my opinion, this agreement, you know, didn't put election integrity at the forefront is why I couldn't go along with it. So Matt, you got it up there. So if they can see that, yeah, that's pretty basic. I won't read it, but you know, that was my thing is I told leadership that was my issue is I was very concerned with the fact that we were turning our, and the way I viewed it, turning our back on election integrity and letting that be a mute point. Also, we could have the speaker position. So upon that,
and we gave up election integrity for the speaker position, but not the
Yeah.
speaker position,
Yeah.
as evidenced by the rules that I just read out.
Yeah.
I think that's what's concerning to me.
Yeah. Well, so I voiced my frustration and said that, listen, something's got to change, and I've got to be able to have a stronger voice when it comes to election integrity. So I sat down with leadership prior to that, and I demanded, right, for lack of a better term, that I get put on the elections committee. I was not going to be able to sit by and just have election integrity get swept under the rug. So I wanted to be a strong voice, as I have been for the last 4 years as a non-candidate, as a non-House member. In my opinion on election integrity, and I wanted to be able to have that same microphone, would sort of say, in the House. So they did agree to allow me to be seated in the elections committee. So before I was on taxes, um, education finance, and education policy. I have now been removed from education finance and put into the elections committee. So that kind of is what transpired on Thursday, which again it is what it is. We're going to move forward as a body. We're going to try to win 40B, and I'm going to be a very, very strong vocal advocate for election integrity. I'm going to bring some really strong bills.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Strong bills. Now, so you got moved to elections, right? So I imagine that means you have a passion for elections. Give me one or two, maybe three bills, top priority elections bills that you think that should be heard and passed out of the Minnesota legislature.
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, but just pick one or two.
I think
top priorities.
Yeah, I think a constitutional amendment to have a voter ID would be great.
Okay, so constitutional voter ID.
Yep, I
like
think
that.
Provisional ballots is
And provisional ballots. Yeah, those are
like,
great.
Those are two
Top two.
shouldn't be
for
an
sure.
issue at all,
Shouldn't be, but of course we're going to run into the machine.
right? Absolutely. Now, going further would be, I'm definitely going to put forth a bill that tries to remove those machines. That is going to be a much harder battle.
Or
And
how
that's
about the other one that we can vote whenever we want to for the 45 days.
same day voting, right?
Yeah.
That is another one. But I would love to see the absentee ballot thing just totally. I mean, it is just absurd.
It needs to be
the amount
revamped.
the amount of people that anybody and anyone can request an absentee ballot for anything, and I think that's just absolutely garbage. It was not designed. This is now a post-COVID ripple effect,
Right.
and now they just allow absentee ballots to be,
Well, it's
the
funny.
new norm of voting, and it's like get off your ass.
And go
Quit
vote.
being lazy, show up to the booth, and go vote in person. There's not this voting from home. This is just, and I know there's a lot of Republicans that did that.
So,
That's what helped us win. So
Right.
I'm
So I'm going to interrupt you right there. Just I don't like to interrupt you, but
Sure,
in this
go ahead.
situation,
I'm getting heated.
you're going a little too hot. I'll bring us back down a little bit. So the reality of the situation, I agree with you to a point. Now, here's the thing that I think is interesting. So by advocating for same-day voting, I 100% think that puts us on a much more integral, higher integrity level of voting. Now, the other problem, though, is that there are people who can't vote on voting day, and I still want to give them a voice. So I think we have to find the middle ground. I think that's the thing that I think is most concerning to me, is that we got to find the middle ground. Now, I'm not saying what we're doing right now is working, because I completely disagree. I think I agree with you. I think there's a lot of errors in what's happening. So we have to find a way to give everybody a vote, but also do it the right way. And right now is not the right way.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree with you. I mean, listen, we definitely can do better than what we're doing. Obviously,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe there's a little bit more of a middle ground, but I think in some cases there's room for middle ground, and in other cases it's just room for complete changing up and repealing, and it's just
we got to change it.
it's absurd, right? Like I've just
So
everybody knows it,
how many weeks do we have Republicans in charge in the House? Because obviously there's a power sharing agreement coming. How many weeks we got left?
It's going to be 4 weeks, I believe.
Yeah.
After
'cause-
this last week, so 4
right,
weeks.
So 4 weeks left. So let's just express exactly what kind of craziness that means, because the opposite happened in the Senate. We went from a tie to now there is a majority. And so I'm going to transition into talking about the power sharing agreement here in the Senate and what happened to them. So there was an election. There was an election, in my opinion, that the writ was way too early.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Senator Dietzig passed away, and within less than 24 hours, we had an election writ and it was all getting rocking and rolling. The thing that I would be most concerned with is not only that, but we swear in the Senator Clark, and less than 30 seconds later, there's a motion on the floor to remove the power sharing agreement. So it's just crazy to me. So now we're removing the power sharing agreement, and so I was on Health and Human Services, I was on Labor, and I was on Judiciary. I'm no longer on Judiciary because we no longer have a power sharing agreement because now there's less members. So I'm not overly upset about it. Judiciary was a pretty tough one, but it's pretty sad. We signed out within less than minutes. There was all these Blue Dog Democrats, the 9 members of the Senate that created this group called the Blue Dog Democrats. I think Senator Draskowski said it best: the yellow-bellied lapdogs of the Senate.
And can't people see through the nonsense with that? That is just
that's
a marketing ploy for them to act like they're going to be middle ground fighters. We're going to work with the right because we just ran roughshod for the last 2 years. Now we need to come to the middle and work with the moderates. It's
right. Well, and here's the sad part. So they needed 34 votes to remove the agreement, and here we are. These 9 people who are saying that they want to be more bipartisan, they want to work together, which some of these colleagues of mine, they are good people overall, right? Like, I think they try to do the right thing. Now, of course, that doesn't mean they vote the right way. And in fact, there's a lot of things that we'll never agree on politically. But the reality is I can work with them. I work with them all the time. There's a reason why I became one of the most bipartisan senators in the state of Minnesota, because I'm willing to work with whoever. But I also don't sacrifice my ideals. I'm not going to vote against my conservative values, the 2 lenses that I created. So you have 4 pillars, I have 2 lenses. The 2 lenses I look through are pretty straightforward. Don't grow government, and don't infringe on people's private rights. So simple as that. They're inalienable rights, and here we are. We write laws every day that seem to take somebody's right away. It's absolutely crazy to me. This segues perfectly for us. We can move right into exhibit. Let's see, what is this? Exhibit 4. Liberal tiers. We're gonna start the liberal tiers section. So here's one of those Blue Dog Democrats talking to us about how upset she is about this supposed power sharing agreement ending.
As a DFL member who won her seat by only 321 votes in the last election, it is not lost on me that I represent not only the Democrats in my district, but the Republicans. And I have found the last few weeks to be a very productive use of our time to work together across the aisle to work on consensus building, common sense bills. It is my hope that that will continue. Unfortunately, I don't have the assurances from everyone in my caucus that we will. It has been a difficult weekend leading up to today. I have struggled with what I have heard from my constituents, what they want to see me do to represent them, because quite frankly, I have a fair number of constituents in my district that do not feel represented by what we have done in the legislature over the past 2 years. My commitment is to represent everyone in my district, not just the Democrats. My commitment is to listen to the Republicans and the independents and the libertarians and the people who are not involved in politics but just know that they don't like the way things are going right now. That is my responsibility as their senator, and that's what they elected me to do. My promise is to continue to do that. My word means something. If I give someone my word, I will stand by my word. I expect the same courtesy from the rest of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. My commitment is to continue to work in a bipartisan fashion. My loyalty is to my districts, not the DFL. So to everyone in this chamber, you have my commitment to work with you on policy that works for every Minnesotan. Thank you, Mr. President.
And hit pause.
That is about that's so much theater. It's just
it's all theater, right?
It's such lies.
Here's the funny part. So we get a lot more speakers going, but at the end of the day, she ended up being the 34th vote to not only kill the amendment, to delay the power sharing agreement. She ended up being the 34th vote to remove the power sharing agreement. So if she really wanted to work as a bipartisan behavior, we would just stay as a bipartisan body. But instead, here we are. Now we're back to two seat issues in the two committees I serve on, Health and Human Services and Labor. We're a 2-seat minority, and there's only one seat that separates the whole room. But
Yeah.
here we are, we're making 2 seats separate the committees. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I bet if you were to go to Judy Seeberger's website or her Facebook page or any newsletter that she put out, that is going to be on there.
Oh, 100%.
Because
that's
all
on there.
that is a dog and pony show for her to sit there and say, "See, I work with everyone." Liar. No, you don't. You're a freaking liar. It's nonsense. It's theater. You want to listen, in Minnesota, we don't have, aside from the Guthrie and we don't have theaters.
Right.
Theater is on the floor of the House and the Senate. Now,
I'm going to correct you, though. I do love going to the theater. There's a theater down in Faribault. It's a great theater, Paradise Theater. It's a great place to be. In fact, the wife, the kids, and I are going to a show around the world in 80 days. It's coming up. So we love theater, but that's what that is, right? Like, we
Yeah.
just watch theater.
Yeah.
Like, that was an all-written script. She
Yeah.
was ready to rock. Then she votes the opposite way of what she's saying. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. let's let what would have been a convicted felon, right?
Right.
In Nicole Mitchell continue to have the final say in votes on the Senate floor.
See, it's great you brought that up, because that's the other thing. She's voted to protect her every single time.
And like,
but the funny part, they hide behind a procedural vote every time. It's out of order to call for her to be removed. The reason why she can't vote yes to be removed or to have her removed is because she votes yes that it's out of order.
Yeah.
So she removes herself from having to actually vote the right way by saying, I voted for a procedure. I didn't vote for the vote. I voted for a procedure.
Correct.
And it's absolutely silly. It's all political theater. It drives me insane every time I see that.
It's that go-to word the Democrats use all the time and time again. They just gaslight all day,
hang on.
every day.
Speaking of gaslighting, Matt, I just sent you a message. This is breaking news. I don't know if you want to hit the breaking news button so that we can hear the cool sound effects we got. I like it. All right, so I sent you a tweet from the Minnesota DFL Senate, I think is what they're coming from, and they're claiming that us Republicans are in denial about President Trump. No, I'm not in denial. I'm a fully aware adult in the room. And go ahead and play. I haven't even listened to this whole thing.
Your phone in the White House tarnish that position?
We're not going to go down that path. We're dealing with the Minnesota State Senate right now and what we can control. And so we are looking at that and all the avenues that we can to make sure that justice is served.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
No.
I'll get off the national politics stage here. It's only been in 9 days, so we'll give things time to settle a little bit. I know it seems to be fun to talk about, but I think things will settle and we'll see what goes on.
Things that affect human beings are not affected, and weren't even proposed to be affected. It was other programs.
So basically what I'm hearing from you and what I'm hearing all day today is that we actually don't know that this grant freeze has any effect on the state of Minnesota at this time because we have yet to see what actually might be frozen.
Let's focus on what we came here to talk about originally, and we'll get more information as it surfaces, and I'm confident that hopefully if anybody is overly alarmed that they'll find themselves much more comfortable with more information.
We will see this issue clarified very, very quickly. As I think the administration said, we don't expect any interruption to those direct benefits that people expect to receive.
Is that what you're seeing from the Republicans in Washington, that they're being bipartisan?
I don't sit in Washington right now. We're concentrating on what we can do in the Minnesota State Senate.
All right, let's talk about that. So I'm going to talk about this from my perspective and why I made the cameo show. Hey, thanks Senate DFL caucus for at least showing what I had to say. It's 100% accurate. Not a single thing in the president's executive order that talks about federal funding freeze was even a thing in the committees that we were listening to. So it was funny. In Health and Human Services, we hear the lefties, the far left liberals complaining about, oh, people aren't going to get their Medicare payments. They're not getting their Social Security, so on and so forth. That's not true. You're lying. Not a single person's Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security was frozen. The one error that happened was a IT error, and the payments were corrected within less than 24 hours. So that's a load of baloney. Let's talk about the other things out there. You know, Veterans Affairs was going to be paused. No, it wasn't. It wasn't even in the executive order. That was not even a thing. We're making this up.
Yeah.
The constant fear mongering, or in this case, fear porn that's happening is concerning people's brains. Like, I'm getting text messages and emails. Stand against President Trump. We don't have any money. There's nowhere. Nothing's been proven to have frozen anything. And we're past the 5th, because the 5th was the date that it was pushed off by the judge. And we still don't have anything that's been frozen other than some funding to specific programs, DEI programs.
Yeah. Well, when Democrats are losing control of the narrative, right, and they see that there's pushback from, their constituents that don't agree with their ideology and the way that they've been, messaging, they have to try to change the messaging, right? They got to bring it right back to Donald Trump and the tyrant and the dictator, and he's doing this and he's doing that and he's taking away from the children.
And
or
the
whatever
old people,
it is he's going to try.
and
to
the old
do.
people. That's my favorite part, right? Like, they were complaining about Medicare being frozen. This is what's funny, right? They complain about Medicare income being frozen, or Social Security income being frozen. But then you have Governor Walz's proposed budget cutting funding to long-term care facilities, cutting funding to disability services, which are both Social Security services. And then he's also cutting preventative health care.
And he's also cutting teachers' pay in the QCOM.
And he's messing up the pensions.
Right. So we've got, like, in our school, many of the school districts that in our districts, those teachers get paid and compensated with the QCOM.
Right. And now we're not going to pay for it. No, right.
It's getting cut $70 million.
Right. So here we are blaming Donald Trump for something that our own governor is proposing.
Tyrant Tim.
Tampon Timmy. He loves those tampons. Don't worry, though. We're going to keep funding the tampons in the boys' bathrooms.
Yeah.
That's necessary.
I've been going hard against Tampon Tim and tyrannical, the tyrant of state, right? Because Steve Simon is.
Well, he was definitely acting like it. He doesn't have any power now, though.
Not a secretary.
It's gone. Secretary of State. He's not very good.
Well, I'm going to be quiet.
You're going to be quiet. Yeah, well, it is what it
pisses me.
Well, you're rightfully
He's
so.
a phony.
So, this is the point where we got to make fun of some people. We got to talk about the issues that we had going forward. Let's talk about our individual issues, what we're working on. Let's kind of end the show with some positives, some things that we're excited to work about.
Well, yeah, I mean, so all those, I had
let's talk about what your problems are, and then we'll talk about where our goals are.
So because of the Supreme Court ruling that we didn't have.
Was it a ruling or an opinion? Sorry, I have to correct you.
An opinion.
Okay, I was just saying, because it wasn't a ruling. There was no writ. There was nothing formal about it. It was just a written opinion.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court opinion that we didn't have a quorum, all the bills that I brought forth and dropped, they got pulled from the journal, which means the revisor's office is the office within the Capitol that prints out the language, right? And gives me what we call jackets, which then we get signatures on, get co-authors on, and then we turn it back in, and that becomes a bill. So all of the bills that I had, got put in, totally got scrubbed from the journal, and they have to I have to get those jackets back, get the signatures again, and resubmit them. So bills like the Never Again Act, the constitutional carry, the data center bill that we have going forward. That's, it had a lot of steam going ahead. I know it still has
some steam, but we need to get a hearing.
It did. So this, you got a lot of steam on the Senate side with it. For me, I was having those conversations, was on schedule to have a committee hearing on that. And because of that quorum opinion, that kind of got,
got derailed.
So
I think you were going to get a hearing before I was.
Yeah, I was. Crazy. I had the CA of actually the committee that I'm now in, elections and government.
Yep.
I'll be able to present that in my own committee.
Perfect.
So that'll be really good. So those are going to have to be resubmitted. I did get an email on Friday, which Fridays are typically a non-capital day, right? I mean, there are some members
Right.
that work at the Capitol on Fridays. In my case, most of the time, and most members, I would say, use that as a local day where
I was going to
you
say, I work in district.
yeah, you work in district where you meet with constituents, you go up to you go to other events where whether you're talking to, commissioners, constituents that have specific issues, bills that they want to see. I've met with superintendents and stuff like that. So, I did get an email on Friday that a lot of those, a good handful of those bills that I had presented
Are reprinted.
are
now.
reprinted and rejacketed. So those will be what I'll be working on this week to get signatures to get resubmitted. And so that's where we'll be at. But I'm looking forward to finally being able to, have those committee meetings, have those hearings. So some of those constituents that we've talked to before that came to the Capitol will be definitely connecting with you guys soon because we'll need some testifiers in front of the committee to present their case and their reasoning why the data center bill specifically is a huge issue for our local constituents.
I think so. I'm going to talk about my bills here for a second. I think the data center bill is really important. Any of you that are listening that really want that data center bill pushed forward, I need you to reach out to the senators that are on the state and local gov committee. I don't have the list right in front of me, so I know the chair is Chair Zhang, I believe is how he says his last name. And then a vice chair would be Senator McQuaid, who's the second on the bill. So reach out to her and try and get her to get a hearing for it so that we can get moving on that. As for bills that I've actually been able to present, Cottage Foods is the bill that has had its hearing already in the Senate. Cottage Foods is a really big deal. And the big changes in that bill specifically are going to be looking at changing the ability to ship the products, especially across the state. It's a really big deal, even for Matty V over there, who partakes in the cottage foods industry by making spices. So he'd be a good one to talk to about that.
I'm going to love that bill.
I was going to say, what do you think, Matt? Hopefully we can get some of that stuff done, huh?
Oh, it's fantastic. If I could have had that bill when I started doing spices, I wouldn't have had to look for a co-packer.
Right.
And because when you ship things, you have to have it done that way.
Yep.
So thank you for presenting that bill. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So it's going to help lots of people, not just all over the state, but also right here in our own district.
Yeah,
so,
because it helps the small producer get to a point where they can be a large producer, right?
Right.
If you're just starting off a business with a product, it's hard to be able to compete with the big box.
Well, it's impossible, right? Like you don't have
absolutely.
the 10 grand up front just to get the commercial kitchen, not including the labeling and all of that stuff. I mean, just the kitchen alone costs you $10,000, and that's if you get a license for that. I'm not talking about the actual kitchen because that's hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on what kind of kitchen you're making.
And all the bureaucracy that goes with that.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
You've
got to have
have
inspections. You got to pay for all this stuff. I mean, it's insane.
And it can take months. I mean, I've been through that process with managing properties.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've had restaurants that have to have those inspections after they've been required to make the smallest change.
Right.
Like,
I moved my fryer 6 inches to the left. Well, now we got to reinspect.
Got to have the city come in. Got to have the state come in. It's
county,
like,
state,
my gosh, give me
federal,
a break.
all of the above.
My take is
just want to make some French fries.
Great companies like Hy-Vee, they would take my products if I could actually do that.
So let's get to that. So that bill is actually a different bill. What you're talking about is a little bit different. So cottage foods is an exemption. I'm going to be very specific. It is an exemption. It is what it is. You can't sell to grocery stores with a cottage food exemption, no matter what you do.
That was my point. You got it.
And this bill won't change that. But the bill that will is micro enterprises kitchens. That's the second bill that goes with the cottage foods bill. And what that does is a tiered system so that it allows the producers to sell to local industry. So like Mac and Tunes, they can buy food from these micro enterprise kitchens, which you make at home. So let's get a hearing on that. It sounds like we're going to maybe get there. So switching subjects a little bit, the thing that really hits home for me is veterans. It's something that I've been very interested in working on. I've talked with Drew. He's right there with me. We really care about our guys that give up their lives basically,
and women,
and the women. Yep, guys and gals that give up their lives to go and fight for us, to go and protect us, keep us safe here at home. The bill that's going to have a hearing tomorrow in the Senate. So hopefully you can get there. It's been heard in the House and in the Senate before, but you're gonna be the chief author this time around.
Yeah, well, and this one, is this the burial one?
Yep. So this will
Yeah,
be the burial rights.
this one I've got so much support with that one.
Right.
I mean, everybody.
I haven't
just
run into anybody that's opposed except for Senator Mitchell. She's the one who actually caused it to get taken out. Otherwise, it'd already be a state law.
That's insane.
She pulled it
And
out.
she's a veteran.
And she is a veteran herself. Well, she's active. She's currently on guard, I believe.
Yeah, Air Force.
Air Force, yep. So I just can't believe it. She's the one who pulled it out.
So give
in
a little
conference committee.
detail on
So let's
that.
talk about it.
Yeah.
So the Veterans Burial Bill, what it is. So we've got a couple of people coming to testify tomorrow, which will be great. But what the bill does is right now in the state of Minnesota, if you're not being buried in a federal cemetery, you normally would get buried in a state cemetery that's owned by the state for veterans. But key term here, but your spouse can't get buried with you without a cost of a fee. I think it's like $750 per, but it might be $1,000. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. It's crazy, but you have to pay to be buried with your veteran. So your spouse has to be paid to be buried with you, and any children, dependents that are young, if they pass away, they also have to pay if they're going to be buried with you. So it's absolutely crazy to me that we are charging our veterans such a nominal thing. It's a plot that's already owned by the state, and it's already going to be, the veteran's already going to be there. You know, Fort Snelling, they either bury on top of or across from each other. Like the plot is already saved for that veteran and their spouse. It's the same thing in state cemeteries. There's only one spot. So it's not like we're giving up more land. It's not like that. It's just we're charging them to do it. It just doesn't make any sense. Yes, there's some money involved. This is one of those things where money shouldn't matter. It should just be, we got to give the veterans what they deserve.
But the support, some of that funding comes from the Support Our Troops Fund.
Oh, 100%. All of the funding does.
Yeah, which is a license plate fund.
Right.
Which
we have another
which
bill.
we have
You
another
talk about
bill. So then that's the there's two. There's the Legion of Merit license plate,
Yep.
which there are service members that get the Legion of Merit. Now I know that's a very limited number of veterans that would qualify for that. So
Sure.
that one is probably going to get a little bit more pushback and a little probably in all honesty is going to be harder to get that passed just because of the number of license plate that we already have and the number of people that would qualify for that plate. So they, but
Right.
that would be a really great one. And then it's the National Defense one.
Right, absolutely.
And now that one's going to have a lot more participation,
And a lot more people qualify.
a lot more people qualified, and again, the service members, that I've talked to that are in the House or former service members have all supported that.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And so because there are a lot more people that would qualify for that, and a lot of veterans that would love to have the opportunity to have that license plate. That will actually generate a lot more funds,
Well, and it
which will
could-
then go into
I was
the
going to say, it
Support Our
could pay
Troops.
for the whole thing, right? So these bills could pay for each other. That's the
Correct.
nice thing. And
Correct.
so instead of making the veteran pay when someone passes away, they have an opportunity to have a license plate that looks really cool.
Yep.
And B, it goes into the fund that helps pay for the things that they deserve. So in a long roundabout way, they're still paying for it, but in this way, they get to have a cool license plate, and they don't have to think about it when someone dies.
Yep.
That's the thing that I think is most important to me. Like, could you imagine, like, hey, by the way, my wife just passed away. Now I have a plot where I'm going to be buried, but now I have to pay for it for my wife.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, in reality, the spouses of service members, they
serve just as much as
they've served too.
Yeah, they serve just as much as the veteran does.
Absolutely.
And you'll hear about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm going to let the testifiers tell the stories.
That's great.
Because they're the ones that know what life is like.
Absolutely.
I could never explain it as well as they will.
Yeah, for sure. And then we got another one.
Yeah. Which one do you want to talk about?
That's it's the veteran with the tax.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The state tax. Yeah. The property tax one that we're working on. Yeah. I like that one too. So actually, this is a constituent asked about this. Constituent on 58A side. He's up in Cedar Lake Township. He reached out to me over the summer. He's just like, hey, I'm really upset about something. And I said, hey, what do you want to talk about? Happy to work for whoever. You bring me a bill idea, I'm more than happy to drop a bill, and I'm more than happy to push for it. So what happens is veterans that get disabled, right? Disabled veterans. That's what this bill is about. they get some property tax exemptions or at least some breaks. And it's been such an antiquated system. It's old. It's super old. The system that is currently written. How many people can buy a 4-bedroom house for $300,000 or less? No one. It doesn't exist. Even here in Lonsdale, where real estate is cheap, hey, feel free to come down to Lonsdale. We got some good places to live.
But is the internet good? Because I hear that. I hear the chirping in Lonsdale, but the internet's poor.
We're always chirping about MediaCom or BevCom. It's always a chirp. But either way.
No slight on them. I'm just saying. I see the community page, and it's always like, internet's trash. I'm moving to Northfield.
Well, we do live in rural Minnesota where there are issues with rural internet. It does happen. But anyways, with that being said, this individual brought forward a great idea. We need to give tax breaks, property tax breaks to veterans, disabled veterans who want to live their lives. They want to own their own house, but the property tax, which the state has already taxed them. I mean, that's the funny thing for me is like we're taxing a veteran who we pay, and then we're going to tax them when we pay them, and we're going to tax their income comes from taxpayers. It's just this never-ending loop of how this money moves back and forth between the government and the veteran makes zero sense. So it's a small token that we can give them is a break on their taxes, their property taxes. Thanks, Drew, for bringing that up. I always forget about all.
Well, yeah, no, because that was the one that just came on my,
Yeah, I just dropped that.
Desk,
I was going
right?
to say I just dropped that on your desk the other day.
Yeah, no, I mean, anything we can do for veterans and making their lives easier and more affordable, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Right?
Absolutely.
And not just veterans, but, again, I didn't serve. I got a lot of family members that served. I appreciate all the veterans and, military members that serve currently and before. So again, I mean, to me, those are no-brainers. We should put those people first and foremost all the time because they are willing to make a sacrifice that the majority of Minnesotans and Americans aren't willing to make. So
100%.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So with that, I think we'll end on a good note. Fighting for veterans. That's the biggest thing for me.
I like it.
Well, this is a great show.
I think it's a great show. Yeah.
Hey guys, before we wrap up, I have a question.
Sure.
So when they started coming back, the Democrats coming back to the House, did you hear this coming down the hall? Was there any crying going on on their way in?
There was some. I think the only one that was crying. I mean, I think at least in the House, majority of them are pretty skippy. They're pretty happy. I mean, I remember.
No, they won. I mean, in my opinion, they won.
They did win. They got what they wanted. They didn't have to face the consequences of what was about to
cheating.
be of cheating. Right. They controlled the narrative. We actually had a Supreme Court case that day. That morning no, it actually went through.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, Ryan Wilson actually presented that case. Presented that case in front of the Supreme Court. And from what I heard from other members that were there, we did fantastic.
Well, that's great because it didn't go so well with the quorum argument.
Well, and that was my argument of making the deal when we did is we were bringing that case to the Supreme Court to finally get an opportunity to compel those members to show back up to the House. And we were compelling them by fining them, their pay.
Do we know if we're going to get a hearing or like an actual opinion from the court on that?
Well,
have we heard what's going to happen?
I mean, they heard the case.
Okay.
I would assume they're going to give an opinion just for
posterity.
For posterity, and then obviously just to kind of set a precedent going forward that
just
now gives us something to fall back on, for future sessions if they try to pull the same shenanigans. Right now, we can go right to the ruling of this or opinion of this Supreme Court that states that minority members can compel the members that aren't showing up to show up.
Yeah,
right?
And I think everybody should be able to tell someone to show up. It's not that hard. You were elected. Show up for work.
Yeah. Again, this was a complete gaslighting, astroturfing, hijacking of our legislative body for them to get exactly what they want. They did. It's like that little whiny ass little brat kid that just sits there and there you go, perfect. That gets what they want, right? He yells and screams and kicks and screams and is louder. And the parents go, okay, all right, and just, caves in. So
We all know those kids. It happens.
Yeah, those kids need an ass whooping.
Sometimes they get it.
We don't make them like we used to.
No, that's true.
So, with that said,
Well, what's our
great
plans? What's our plans for next week, or in 2 weeks? I think we'll do every 2 weeks. It sounds like.
yeah, I mean, we'll just give the state of the state and what we've gone through. You never know. I mean, it's a roller coaster there.
It feels like no matter what we do, every day is a new story.
Oh yeah, it's a roller coaster. I'm not even going to be able to tell you what it's going to come.
It's part of the theater, right? The thing that I've learned is it's all part of the theater. We got to keep ourselves relevant, so we just got to keep in the news.
So to predict what's going to come next week in 2 weeks, God only knows.
Well, I hope we have good news. I'm hoping that we actually get some bill hearings on some of these other bills that we're working really hard on, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, everybody.
Freedom isn't free. Remember that.
Check us out on Rumble and on YouTube.
Rumble and YouTube. You got it.
See ya.